crazy. But I got back last night, so I'm here today. So we did not finish my story, our little history lesson on the 6 wives of Henry VIII last week, so we're going to finish it up today. Does everybody remember the name of the first wife?
No.
No.
Something with an
Something with an A.
Oh, I know.
That's the second wife. Catherine Aragon, first wife. Longest wife, Catholic wife. Anne Boleyn, second wife.
It wasn't like Catherine,
There we go. Anne Boleyn, second wife, got beheaded, right? For treason. Boo. James Seymour, favorite wife, gave him what? A son. Good. Yep, died from childbirth. Anne of Cleves. What happened to her?
she didn't get killed.
She did not get killed. That's
She's the
right.
longest.
She was like the favorite or something.
No, favorite was this one. Remember?
Did she have a son?
She did not. Yeah. She was the smart one. That's correct. She gave King Henry what he wanted, which was a.
Boy.
There's 3 options.
A
The
boy.
first he had to die.
Divorce.
Divorce.
With no problem.
Right? Divorce with no problems. She lived a nice, happy life after that.
And then she got land.
Catherine Howard. This is the teenager. What happened to her?
She died.
She died. Why?
Head chopped off.
Why did she get her head chopped off?
Cheated.
She cheated. Catherine Parr. What happened to her?
She died.
Last
I
one.
got split up.
No, well, she did have childbirth eventually, but what? She's the one who outlived
All of
King
them.
Henry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she outlived him. She was his wife when he died. All right. Then we spoke briefly about who's this guy?
Edward.
The 6th. His son. Let's have a seat. And this lady, Lady Jane Grey, who he tried to get to take over the throne. We stopped on this page, okay? Did we talk about who this is?
Yeah. I think we did first.
Do you know who she is?
Remember that
The
lady?
big-headed lady.
She killed Lady Jane.
She did kill Lady Jane Grey.
Because she
Hey
was-
guys, let's
Yep.
calm down. I know it's exciting stuff. She did kill Lady Jane Grey because she was next in line for the throne. If we remember we had that 3rd succession act
Shut up.
King Henry made, put all of his children in the lines of succession, right? She was number 2 after King Edward died. She was the 2nd. King Edward tried to say, no way, Jose. I don't want a Catholic. Yes, ma'am?
So it was like people back then had time.
Well, she killed people. It's like the death penalty. So she didn't go around stabbing people with a knife in their sleep. She arrested them. They got tried most of the time. And the court found them guilty. The death penalty was very common. Lots of crazy things were very common. You stole something, you got your hand cut off. Okay? You did something, you were treasonous. You committed heresy. So most of these people were convicted of heresy, which is teaching or believing or participating in something that goes against what the church believes. For Catholics, that's anything Protestant. For Protestants, that's anything Catholic. So when King Henry was killing everybody, all the Catholics, it was because they were Catholic. That's what they were convicted of. That was the crime. When Mary I was doing it, they were convicted of Protestantism. That was the crime, right? So no, she wasn't running around stabbing people in their sleep. So she died with no children. Did we talk about her husband at all? She married the King of Spain, her cousin. Remember her mom was the Princess of Spain. Remember? Her parents, King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, made Spain. She was the youngest daughter. That was her mom, right? So her mom was the Princess of Spain. She married the King of Spain. Pretty close relatives, right? That was pretty normal back then. Mostly because in the beginning, they wanted to keep blood pure, blood royal, right? Which was a common practice in most countries, not just European ones, but African and Asian countries as well take Egypt, for example, Pharaoh went a little farther than most other countries. Most countries, you can marry your cousins, but not your siblings. Pharaohs pretty much were required to marry their siblings because pharaohs were considered divine. They were gods on earth, right? They were gods. If they married someone who was not a descendant of the pharaoh, that would make them, their children, half gods. So they had to marry somebody who's a descendant of the pharaoh. If you're a descendant of the pharaoh, who else is a descendant? Your sister, right? So you have children with your siblings to keep the divinity, the blood, pure. So it's kind of the same idea back then. And then it became political, right? Everybody's related. Everybody owns a country, right? So I'm going to marry the king of Spain, so Spain doesn't invade me. And if France decides to invade me, Spain will help me out, right? So every royal family intermarries each other for alliances. Marriage in royal families, 9 times out of 10, is because of politics. Nothing to do with love, nothing to do with anything. King Henry had 6 wives, and because he didn't have a parent brokering his marriages, he got to pick, right? So most people are married before their parents die, and their parents decide who they get married to. You cannot get married as a royal person without the permission of the king. King Henry's sister got married to a guy. He died, like literally a few days after they got married. And so she married King Henry's friend without permission. King Henry, of course, was livid, banished his sister and his best friend from the court for a while. They did get to come back eventually, but it was a super big deal. You cannot get married without the king's permission, right? So that's why she's marrying her cousin, because not only is she royal and up to her status, she's the Queen of England. If she marries anybody else other than a king, it's marrying down, right? People don't often marry down, right? Especially monarchs. So, especially women monarchs, because then it creates problems. So she married the king of Spain, her cousin, and they didn't really like each other. So he spent most of his time in Spain, she spent most of her time in England. They, of course, since they didn't spend any time together, they didn't have any children. She was also pretty old. She died 5 years after she became queen with no children. What happens when you have no children? You don't have an heir. Because of that third succession act that we talked about, right? Queen Elizabeth comes in. This is like the normal picture that you'll see when you see Queen Elizabeth. Really white face, right? Fun fact, anybody know what's in this face paint? That becomes a real big problem? What?
Ashes.
No?
Toxic.
Ashes.
Lead.
Lead, yes. Lead is poisonous, right? Everybody hear about the lead paint? Like that,
Yeah.
For a long time until very recently, like, I don't know, don't quote me on this, 40, 50 years ago, we used lead in our paint, right? So babies would chew on their crayons and they get lead poisoning. You touch your wall, you get lead poisoning, right? It's in your water. We found out that it kills us. They didn't know that back then. So she had lead in her face paint. This woman, by the time she died, her face was pretty much melted off, okay, because she used this makeup so much. Her teeth had all pretty much fallen out. Her mouth was so disgusting that she would put little packets of like flowers and stuff in her cheeks so that her breath wouldn't smell so bad, right? And this is the queen. So imagine if you're poor, how bad things can get too. So healthcare was not the best back then, but that's the picture that most people see of her. She is known as the Virgin Queen. Anybody want to guess why?
Because she didn't have sex.
She never got married. I have no idea if she ever slept with a man. I don't know. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that say she did and she had a son and blah, 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 blah. We don't know for sure, but we do know for sure she never got married. And back then, if you weren't married, you weren't having sex. So she's known as the Virgin Queen, right? She pioneered the Golden Age, that age of exploration where European countries were just going out and trying to find all the resources they could in the New World. What is the New World? Americas, the Americas, South and North America, right? So, what part of the Americas did England colonize? What part of the Americas did England colonize? No, Spain is in Europe. In the Americas, what part? 1776. This country.
California.
No, the country that they occupied in 1776. They declared independence. What country is that?
Washington.
That's a state. Come on, think.
United States.
United States, right? So they colonized what is called the United States. Does anybody know who colonized Canada? No.
England.
France. Who said France? Who colonized Mexico?
Spain.
Spain, right? So, Spain, if you remember from last time, what religion is Spain?
European.
Well, they're all Christians. Protestants and Catholics are both Christians. So the options are Catholic or Protestant. What's Catholic? Spain is Catholic. Remember, the Pope didn't want to give King Henry a divorce because they were Catholic, and he wanted Spain's approval, right? He wanted Spain's money, right? So Spain is Catholic. Most Mexicans are Catholic because the Spanish took them over, right? Right? So how that kind of worked was, anyone heard the Aztecs? Seen Indiana Jones? Like, that's the Aztecs, okay. Obviously, it was pretty bad. They did a lot of human sacrifices. They had a lot of festivals that involved filleting people's skin off while they're still alive. They killed men, women, children, babies, really they killed a lot of people. So the Indiana Jones is not too far off, although it's very theatrical in how they do it. So the conquistadors, the explorers from Spain come, and they're in Cuba, and then they come over where in Mexico where the Aztecs are, and they get captured by the Aztecs because they were not prepared. They didn't think anybody was there, right? They were not preparing to fight any battles. They were just preparing to explore a wilderness, right? So they come over to the Americas, find that there's people there, get captured. And they weren't treated poorly, but they were fled. They were not allowed to leave. And while they're in this not allowed to leave place, they're telling the Aztecs about their God, about Jesus, and Catholic teachings, right, about Christianity. And they say that, well, if you don't become Catholic, God will punish you. He will smite you, right? So the Aztecs are like, yeah, we're not going to get smote. Our gods are better than your gods. So most religions, other than like a handful of the more modern ones, but most ancient religions believe that gods can live at two different gods can be alive at the same time, right? So Aztecs have their gods, and their gods are there. And then the Europeans have their god, right? They're both gods, they both exist to the Aztecs, but our gods are more powerful, right? You see this in most African and early Middle Eastern. Like in Judaism, you have the other side, which is the pagans, right? Pagans believed that the Jewish God and their gods could battle, right? Because they were two different gods, right? But they were both real. Christians do not believe that. Christians believe there is one God, all the other gods are made up, right? So the Aztecs are like, our gods are stronger than your God, we're not going to follow your God. The conquistadors escape. They go back to Cuba, they reconvene. They come back with tons and tons and tons of ships ready to fight the Aztecs. What do you think they came back to? Nothing. 90% of the Aztecs had died. From what they believed was God smiting them, but what actually was disease, right? Europeans lived in their homes with their animals, right? They were in their kitchen, their cow was right behind them. That's how we get things like chicken pox, swine flu, mad cow disease, right? So we get those things. Europeans have an immunity to them. These native people who do not live with their animals do not. 90% of them die. They come back, there's no one to fight. And that's why all of Mexico is pretty much Catholic, because the Catholic gods smoked them all when they didn't convert to Catholicism, right? So that's why most of them are Catholic. European, and then in Protestantism, same thing. In America, Protestantism, same thing. 90% of Native Americans died from someone saying hello, right? They breathed on them, shook their hand, said hello, all dead, right? Right? So that's how most of the so-called, like, the people always say there's this big genocide of the Native Americans because they all died. Yes, they all died, but 90% of them were on accident. The 10% were treated poorly. I'm not saying that they weren't, but they weren't killed. All of them were killed by like battles and wars. Mostly were killed by people breathing on them, right? So she brought Christianity to America. She brought Europeans to America and helped colonize it, right? It's not until later that we really see like more and more and more pilgrims coming over, right? You know, like Thanksgiving pilgrims, like Mayflower, Plymouth Rock, 1620, right? So she dies in 1603. The Mayflower comes in 1620. So the pilgrims hadn't started coming yet, but she is making these trade routes and these ship routes to come into America and basically make it what it is today, right? And that's how she affects you guys. Most of you, your ancestors, a lot of you, a huge majority of you, your ancestors came from Europe or Africa back then, right? A good chunk. Or if you're Irish, you might have probably came in the 1850s with a potato famine, right? Or you're a more recent immigrant coming here because of the country that was made here, right? Lots of Africans were brought over as slaves. Lots of Irish were brought over as slaves. Asians were brought over to work on the railroads, right? When they started doing that railroad boom later. So this is kind of where we're all coming. Gavin, head up. This is where we're all coming from. Also, back to the religion part. She has made in England, Catholic is still illegal, right? It's still against the law to be Catholic. However, she tries to merge. Boys, you need to be separated. Okay, thanks. She's trying to merge the Protestant and Catholic beliefs, right? She's trying to get some more Catholic tradition in there while still keeping the Protestant ideologies, right? So she's trying to compromise a little bit. But remember, if she's not Protestant, she's not clean, right? Because if she's anything but Protestant, she's a bastard. And can bastards be queen? No. So she's not clean if she's not Protestant. So of course she's going to tell everybody that you can't be Catholic and you have to believe in Protestantism, because if you don't believe in Protestantism, you don't believe in me. And that's a problem, right? She is, at the time, she was the longest reigning monarch. We obviously had the new longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, who died a couple months ago. I got to go see her grave last month. It was super cool to see that. Her son has now taken over, right? Does anyone know what the name of the current king of England is?
King
Charles
the first.
Not the first. The first got his head
Third.
cut off.
Third.
Third, yep. First got his head cut off by Parliament. Second, did okay. And then the third, we'll see how it goes. So my question for you guys, does anybody want to share with me how this story affects you personally and your family or your belief system or how your parents think? If you are a Methodist, a Baptist, Anglican, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, non-denominational, these all stem from the Church of England, right? If you're Lutheran, that's another branch of Protestantism that came from Germany at the same time, right, from Martin Luther. So that will affect you, right? If you are of European descent, this will affect you, right? The Europeans came here, right? If you are a Native American descent, this affects you, right? Your family was part of the 10% who could fight the germs and made it through all of the hardships that the Europeans put it through. If you're of African descent, maybe your ancestors came on a slave ship, maybe your family came later.
Mom came on station.
Do you know that?
No.
No? That's pretty good.
What if Virgin Davis? You're not related to Virgin Davis.
Say again?
I'm related to Virgin Davis.
Huh?
Yes, he was.
What was the question?
I said I'm related to Virgin Davis.
Really?
No, he's not.
I'll have to look into that. I'll let you know. All right. Does anybody have any questions
I told you.
about this?
After Mr. Hall.
Does this affect you at all?
Yeah.
How does it affect you?
He was like, that's cool.
You're Native American? And what else? Anything else? Hispanic? Okay, so Hispanic meaning a mix between
Asian.
Well, yeah, okay, that's actually really good.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
do you do?
people who are Native American, so Hispanics, are half, like, Hispanic is someone who is from, one side is from Spain, one side is a native Mexican, right, a Native American, right? Native Americans came from Asia about 15,000 years ago, either through the Bavarian Strait, so Alaska to Russia connection before it was water, or got in a boat and went down to the bottom of South
Wait, how did the
America.
water create? Is that when the paint?
As glaciers melt, the ocean rises. So we are at the end of an ice age right now, right? So you ever hear, like, you hear about the ice age, right? Like, you ever seen ice age? Yeah, okay. So ice age, people are living in the cold, right? Especially in Europe. As the earth heats up, as it always does, so the climate of the earth has always gone really hot, really cold, really hot, really cold, and it takes a really long time to do those things, right? As the earth heats up, glaciers melt, oceans rise. England didn't used to be an island, it's an island now, right? England, the UK, and it's all an island. England itself is not an island, but the UK is, right? Russia and Alaska used to be connected by land, now it's separated by water. So that's where people came in. Russia, people who are Russian are Asian, right? Russia is in Asia, okay? Come over from Asia, and then came in boats down to South America from Asia, okay? So, and same thing, or they went to Australia. Asians went everywhere, okay? It seems to be only Asians that have that have inhabited, because there was no one here before them, inhabited the Americas and Australia, right? So, but Hispanic people are half Native American, half Spanish, right? So that conquistador story I just told is part of your history, part of your story, right? So I hope that you guys can kind of think about it, see what's going on in your life and how this history pertains to you. It kind of gives you a little bit more either pride in what you believe or a little more like questions what you believe and gets you to really start thinking about why you do things or why this country does things or why your parents or why you think things. That's the whole point of this lesson, is to kind of get you thinking about how history can either teach you a lesson about yourself or help you become more stuck and more proud of who you are, right? Any questions on any of this stuff? It can be a totally random thing about this or any of their lives. All good. Okay, what did King Henry VIII do that totally messed everything up in Europe?
Marvin! Head up, B.
What did King Henry VIII do that totally messed up Europe? It was with the first wife. What happened?
The first wife, she died. Got her head chopped off.
She did not. This one.
Oh, that one?
Remember, divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Okay, first one is divorce. Right? He divorced her, and then what did he have to do to divorce her? What did he have to do?
Oh, he had to become a pope.
He kind of
I gotta
had
come
to
home.
become. He had to become the head of his church. He split from the Catholic Church. He contributed to this Reformation, this civil war of religions, right, between Catholics and Protestants. Okay? Between him and Martin Luther, they created Protestantism, right? That's the important thing to remember for your test. So hear me again. Your test, important thing to remember. King Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church, started his own religion, the Church of England, pushing forward the Protestant Reformation. Okay, if you know that, you